Talk episode where we put the real in real estate, and we've got two fabulous guests tonight. The ever so lovely Kathy Faulkner, who has been the director of MLS for MetroTex for, I'm not going to give it away, but years. And so she is a formidable opponent that is dealing with clear cooperation, abandoning areas, everything that we can point our finger to the negative. Poor Kathy is unfortunately being the bearer of right now, but she is a good sport and a consummate realtor advocate. Thank you, Kathy, for being here tonight.
Glad to be with you again. Yes.
And then, of course, we have Travis Lee Moore, who is a fellow board of director, or a director for our board at MetroTex. He is a fabulous friend and also a fellow graduate of Heavyweight 28 TRLP. Yes. So, and like I said, a good friend of mine. But you are most notably in this arena, the MLS Committee chair, correct?
That's correct.
He's my partner. He's my partner in crime this year.
And pleased to be so.
I mean, Kathy, could you not get a better one? I mean, occasionally you might try to commit the crime outside of the MLS.
Yeah.
That's what also keeps us on our toes.
Exactly. Very much.
Well, this came about because of so many things. We've seen emails come through that have said we've seen an uptick in clear cooperation violations, different things like that. We're in such a reactionary marketplace. Our MLS is such an amazing tool. And of course, some things are going to come up from it. But we really wanted to talk about this because the last time I saw you, Kathy, in person, you're like, areas. Can we talk about areas, Ashley? I'm like, oh my gosh, is it really that big of a deal? And you would have thought you were, tying people's hands behind their back and telling them to use a keyboard with their nose. And so tell us what's going on with the areas and why it's such a big topic of discussion. Oh, but first, Eddie, another director, has already apologized, condolences, sends flowers to Kathy because she has had to work with Travis Lee this whole year.
My buddy Ed.
Yes, gotta love Ed.
It's my burden.
Yes, but Kathy, what are areas? Why have they been removed? How long is this? Give us a history.
So, the history goes back quite a ways, and probably they originated from the Greater Dallas Association. And we don't know exactly when those areas boundary lines were drawn. We think 70s, 80s, maybe. And then as the MLSs started to merge, because I was formerly with Northeast Tarrant County Association. So we were like, oh, well, we're going to have to, have areas. And we're like, okay, well, we have 23 cities. Okay, well, let's make a boundary map. And so they became the cities in Northeast Tarrant County. Well, then Fort Worth had to make their own boundary map. And if you look at the whole boundary area map situation, look at Denton County. Two different realtor associations, so two different area systems. You look at Tarrant County, that's got three realtors, or had three realtor associations, and they all had their own system. Collin County is pretty, consolidated. But then you bring in Texoma. This is a Netris system. You're talking now, Netris is getting close to 50,000 subscribers. Okay, so keep that in mind.
Huge.
So in 2017, well, as MapsCo went out of business, they are the ones who drew those maps, created the map, the pretty pink and blue and yellow maps that we all had laminated on our wall. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're the ones who created those maps. And so they went out they changed their business model. Now they've been sold 3 or 4 times and we don't even have contact with them. In my opinion, they went out of business. And I have said then, and I will say now, those MapsCo books were kept popular because of realtors.
Oh gosh!
And so when the realtors stopped using them, MapsCo went out of business. Okay, so our ability to change any of these boundary lines went away. For instance, one of the boundary lines that they wanted to change was they wanted to move Area 17 further south into the Cedars. That never happened. We couldn't do it. There was probably 20 or 30 requests for boundary changes when MapsCo left because we couldn't make them. Well, when MapsCo left and we started seeing all these, that the system was broken now, and we couldn't fix it, we couldn't change the boundary maps. So for all Netris, it became a broken system, and one that we were bounding people by. And so, as far as rules and regulations and things like that, and we're kind of like, let's, the decision was made at the Netris level. This wasn't a Metrotex initiative. This was they came together at the Netris User Committee, and which is made up of the 14 shareholder associations, and it was voted on in September of 2017 to retire the system.
2017.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, people don't remember because it's been that long ago, and we've been waiting for a couple of things. We've been waiting for Texas A&M to change their statistical reporting because they use the area maps for their reporting. Right. And then we're also under an initiative, or Netris is under initiative to change the data to conform to the Real Estate Standards Organization, or RESO. Okay. And so these are things that are coming together now that A&M is ready to move away from using those areas. And we are now going to be making some bigger changes that are coming in probably around the first of the year that will transform our data and make it more modern and more concise with the rest of the country as far as we're speaking the same language. But without some of the customizations. We'll still have our customizations in a lot of the areas. So, but if you look in nationally too, areas are being retired by many large metropolitan areas, and some never have been. Okay. And so I remember going around to the area meetings after that decision was made and announcing it. I'll never forget one of the comments was, "Well, wait till I die." TikTok. Anyway, so, and I don't remember who that was, so God bless their souls. But anyway, but it was, it's just the time has come that we need to retire the system. And so I do know, and that decision was not made lightly. That was debated back at our association, back at Netris a couple of times before the final vote was taken. So it was a rough decision because I know that the city of Dallas is enormous, right? Oh, yeah. And it concerned me at the time that they were being retired because I'm like, how do you divide the city? But things have changed even since 2017. Technology has improved. And our mindset has changed a little bit too, why do we need to divide the city?
That's the point there, Kathy, that has been a topic of discussion, and it too little too late in some minds, but we're here now. That you said these areas came about in maybe the 70s, or maybe somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Where since then we've realized that there were, a lot of fair housing and redlining issues that were going on. And so if we look at it that way, as realtors, let's remove any of those extra barriers. Lord knows people like to attack us and put us under scrutiny. Remove one more thing that possibly puts me in a liability standpoint. But beyond that, Travis Lee, you had, you're in Dallas, and you were not only the MLS chair, but you actually did the Oak Cliff MLS meetings, the area.
Had a great time chairing the Oak Cliff MLS for those 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And those are, Oak Cliff, Oak Lawn, Park Cities, East Dallas, Duncanville. Those are some strong area cultures that we don't want to see go away, but we've got to figure out how to get folks to draw polygons and overlay them with schools and flood zones now instead of relying on these areas, because it creates an us and them, and here's the border and what's going on over there. Yeah, people will adjust. There's going to be some weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, but we'll all survive.
Well, and even the associations argued over those lines. We had one association, okay, well, we want to move the line up north a little bit further. No, that's our territory. Mm-mm.
Well, and that's the thing. What's your agenda there? Why do you want that?
And then there were the conversations of, well, we need to move this boundary line because that subdivision expanded and those houses are a lot different, meaning nicer on that side of the line than those houses are. And so at the time, we weren't thinking in terms of being aware of what we were saying. But who's living in these houses? What's the demographic?
Right. And you go to any of these area meetings and you ask 3 different realtors, what are the boundaries of Area 15 or 17? You get 3 different answers. Yes. Everybody, because Susie grew up here and Jim didn't, and everybody's got their own sort of mindset around it. So it's time.
Here's me. It's just, I just have the painstaking memories of being my mother's unofficial assistant in the seat with the maps go. because, and I'm sorry if Sherry is on here right now, she is horribly directionally challenged. I used to have to give her navigation points, like turn right at the Taco Bell. God forbid I use, a cardinal direction. But I'm sitting there in these books and she's like, Area 34. I'm like, okay, I'm hold on, and I'm sitting there and she's screaming, where do you go? And I'm like, oh, thank goodness they're gone. The Mapscos are gone.
I was using the Mapsco to deliver pizzas in high school. You got to find where's that house. Yeah.
Yes, Sherry. So absolutely. So I mean, that still happens today. At least now I can get on a mapping tool and find out where she is. Actually, I put a tracking software on there, and she knows it. And so now when she calls me, she says,
Does she know?
Sherry, you know that. But she also does it because if I don't answer my phone right away, and she's always a consummate mom and now grandmother, she would panic. I'm like, I've been in a meeting for 30 minutes. I just need to know where you were. Okay, you can track me back. But at least now
I have it on Steve's and he doesn't know.
We're all there. So, see, Sherry, blink twice if you need help. She's fine, but no, yes.
Sherry, we miss you. Get better.
Yes, Sherry is doing great. No illness can keep her down. So she's a warrior. But no, I mean, those are the things. I mean, we laugh about them and everything else, but we had the maps, we had the books, we had everything else. I don't know that I've looked at an area in maybe 5 to 10 years. And because just training myself and also broadening the geographical area in which I'm serving. And I think that's the other thing too. We have now found, especially in this market, where there is such a squeeze on inventory, and we've got people that are working from home and remotely, and even changing the where their kids are going to school and maybe doing that remotely, that we're blending those barriers. So this is a necessary evolution. And unfortunately, Kathy is just the one that's the whipping post at the moment, but it's here and it's not going anywhere. So, and of course, yes, Sherry's sitting there talking in the comments. This is what happens. Thank you so much, Travis Lee. But no, I think that's just something that unfortunately we're used to something for so long, then you take it away and it seems like a punishment, but it's not. A lot goes into these decisions, and it's not taken lightly. And so people just need to realize, one, from a legal side, this is protecting us as realtors. And then two, it's what's best for our clients. And aren't we here to be the best fiduciary possible? So this is part of that.
Well, and if you've never really played with that mapping tool, you can really drill down to this area, these schools, all kinds of criteria that you couldn't just do, say, in Area 17. That you can. Don't be afraid. Play with it. Click around.
No, and like you said, Kathy, I mean, everything changes, but you guys didn't have the ability to change with it and change those things. So as schools are getting rezoned, and maybe that's why they wanted to be in an area and a sub area, and now they've rezoned that and remapped that because it's grown so exponentially, and we couldn't keep up with the times. But I hear so many things when we can't convert people to our tools, and now they're working better for us. They're more consumer friendly with our one home system, which you would have thought, again, we shot somebody in the arm.
I was kind of hoping for a little break between the two issues. I'm like, I'm just now getting a rest from the one home thing, and we still anyway. Yeah,
but it's creating.
Come on, Faulkner. There's no rest for the wicked.
I know.
No, there's not. But it's all about creating a better consumer experience. And so many times people are using these other tools out there and these other platforms because they find them more user friendly, or the probative data they're getting is better for their search, whether it's commute time, or just their way of how it's even showing up in the portal. And so MLS and Netris, I mean, that's what you guys have been doing, is trying to increase that user experience so our clients don't go off script, and that they have the true factual real-time data that we can support and we can give as realtors. And so I think that's important for us to realize at the same time, it's keeping us relevant.
Well, and you have to remember too, that these mapping tools and search tools that are available to you as realtors are still way more advanced than what the consumer has access to. You could take and draw 5 or 6 different shapes on that map and save it and do an auto email. And those different shapes can overlap, or they can be dispersed throughout the Metroplex. And so with, being in some in Rockwall, some in South Lake, some in downtown Dallas, it and you have other tools like what we call NRIX with an I, NRIX drive time, where you can put in an address. Let's say you have a doctor that you're working with and they work at Baylor downtown and they need to be able to get to Baylor within 10 minutes, from a call. So you put in 10 minutes, you put in Baylor downtown, it'll map it for you. And then all of a sudden it's drawn this map based on traffic counts, but the signs that say 5 minutes to Interstate 35, it's all pulling from that data set, okay, and feeding into the MLS. And so you have access to that. The consumer doesn't have access to that. And so then let's consider too, who do I want and who do you want to be able to draw those I don't want to call them boundary lines, but those areas within that your client wants to work in. You need to make those decisions and not some map that was drawn by a technology that's gone. And the people who drew those boundaries
was drawn when there was no tollway. Yeah,
exactly. And the tools are so much better. Even since 2017, I know I struggled a little bit with some of the mapping tools. These kind of stink, but now they're great. I mean, I never struggle with them now. You can do a freehand draw if you wanted to. So if you're on your iPad or on your laptop with your touchpad or a mouse, you can draw freehand, or you can, look, there's 5 or 6 different tools that you can draw on the map, and you can use all of them. So you could use 5 or 6 different, different things on a map and save it all at once.
Well, and if you want to draw an area and call it 15 and save it,
and you can save
it.
Yes. And we're creating some content to show how to do that before the areas go away. And while there's still overlays, you can go in and just kind of draw it. And then you can save it as a speed bar shortcut and then come back to it and use it over and over and over again. So as a speed bar shortcut. And so there are ways to retain your habits and still we have to move on, because it's not, everybody thinks, well, it's a static piece of information. It isn't changing. It doesn't change, but there still has to be maintained, even though it's not, it still has to be maintained. And so it's not free to maintain those. So.
Well, and truly, what it comes down to is some of it is just being scared and not having those tools. And so you use terms like speed bar shortcut. We've used the mapping tools, all of those things. Yeah, it's scary to jump on there and use it, especially if it's not something that you're used to. Maybe technology and using these things isn't something that comes easy. We also have phenomenal classes that are free most of the time on our matrix system and everything else. And I think that's what's amazing. I've been doing this for a really long time. And I even went to the intro, and I think there's an intermediate, and there's like 5 different ones you can do. And then you actually get a reduction on your MLS dues if you take all the classes at the same time, which I think is phenomenal. And it's there to help train you to use them. We don't expect people to just be dropped on their heads and go ahead and figure it out.
And we stopped teaching the areas in 2017 when we were told they were going away. My trainers don't talk about areas. And so a lot of new agents don't even know what they are. We get calls on the phone. Hey, I'm supposed to fill in this blank on my listing that says area. Where am I supposed to get that information from? Oh, well,
okay. Well, yes. And so I'm going to jump down to Taylor, and he's just now joining. Taylor's our amazing president-elect this year. Yes, Kathy did make sure that people realize that this was a Netris decision and not a Metrotex decision. And Netris is compiled of how many different?
At the time, it was 14 shareholders. They're now up to 15 with the addition of Northwest Louisiana.
Okay.
So, but 50,000 members. So you have to consider that except for a smaller group, let's call it 45,000 members, the system is broken.
Well, and I'm not going to, we don't want to pretend here like we're going through comments and we're not going to address them. And obviously Peggy, has voiced a concern that these were great no matter how we spin it. And you know what? Here's the deal. They were great, but we have to evolve.
No, they're not.
and that's it. 1, they're not as relevant. 2, they're not as probative in our daily lives. And as we have people that are entering the marketplace and looking for different things, it becomes a crutch. And as a a realtor association, as a realtor myself, I need to make sure that I'm pushing myself to do better, to show my value to my consumer, because there are a lot of people that see that we haven't evolved quickly enough, that we're not staying on trend, that we're not doing what's best for the consumer, and therefore they're devaluing what our proposition is. And that's why we have the disruption in our marketplace. And so we do need to get with it. And I know it's hard, but Sherry brought up a good point. This reminds her of when the removal of the forms closet. That was just such an easy way where you could go in and do your packets and staple them together and throw them in your trunk when zip forms came out. But everybody survived and thrived. And look how far we've come since then, in the integration with our CRMs with that. And now with Transaction Desk and being able to have that information populate. And it is hard, but it's necessary, and change is necessary, because if you stop learning, you die. And that's where we are at this point, whether it's a metaphor or whether it's real. I mean, that's what we have to keep on pushing ourselves to do. So, we've gone through that. Please chime in and in the chat, and we'll come back and turn around.
Change is hard. I can remember way back, I don't even remember, late 90s, I was working as the director of catering for the Austin Hilton Town Lakes. And I was like, with email, what is that? I can barely keep up with the phone and the fax. I don't want an email. Stop it. And here we are. Now it's how do you live without email? It's just evolution.
It is evolution, especially when, we might have short sales coming back again. And if you ever had to send a short sale packet via fax, that myself is the most challenging experience of my life, exercising as a realtor. So if we're able to scan that and even e-fax it now, I think we'll be better this go around in being able to do so. So
hopefully the banks will be.
Right. The banks, at least, hopefully they've evolved a little bit. But let's go to another fun topic, shall we? Another one that we all see the colorful language that's used in different private, not so private forums, that when we're talking about clear cooperation.
Screenshots
live forever.
And they wind up in my inbox, by the way.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So, last year when we did the warnings, I will say the usual suspects who were violating policy, they got on board, they understood, they cleaned it up. So by the time 2021 came around, we were thinking, okay, everybody should be good. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We've processed so far this year 89 complaints. Now, those are the ones that are actually had some validity to them. I can tell you, unfortunately, we're getting some that I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Because we have an online form, and the NAR has required that we give them an opportunity to process those complaints anonymously. So we'll get a form, and like we had one last week. Well, they noticed the marketing in May, is what the form asks you. When did you see the marketing and a picture? And so then they send us a picture, and we're like, in May. And I go and I look in the MLS. Well, the listing's been in the MLS since May. I'm like, I don't understand what you're trying to say here. We've had some where they go and take a picture of, there was one where it was a picture of the agent the listing agent standing next to her real estate sign. I'm like, she would have had to have posed for that sign. And the listing was in the MLS. And then we've had others, like we had one the other day that was a picture, just like they went up to the house and took a picture of the street number, but there's no sign in the yard. There's no evidence of marketing. And I'm like, so we do get some frivolous, and
believe it or not,
it's a time wasters. Believe me.
And the first question I always want to ask, and most times it's not appropriate, but did you call this person and give them a heads up and say, hey, I noticed this house is for sale and it's not in the MLS. Did you know that it needs to be? Yeah. No, they're just turning them in. And
Well, of those 89 that we actually were processing, 25 of those have gone to hearing. Now, you can imagine that Travis Lee and Joshua Evans, who are the chair and vice chair of the committee, they chair those hearings. And then it takes 3 to 5 committee members to also sit on those panels. So think of that and how many people that is involved. And each of those hearings take about 2 hours each. And
it's a party.
Oh, and it's
a party.
Yeah. And so, and I will say of those 25, I mean, they have, they're upholding the fines. So let me just say that there's not many fines that have gone away. We have dismissed a few because we are asking for some evidence, and once the evidence is proved, then we administratively will dismiss some of those. And there's a few that don't go to hearing; they just pay the fine and move on. But it's like good 89 complaints. That's a lot. And so I guess it could be worse too.
It could absolutely be worse, Kathy. But part of that is we haven't had 89 listings in 2021.
That's true.
That's why it is a little lower. But I also think that's where you're seeing the uptick. If we're just being serious, it's reactionary to the squeeze in the marketplace on inventory. And what's happening is people are getting bitter, and instead of getting better and bettering their practices because they are not giving their clients the best advantage to get a multiple offer situation one or anything else like that, they're resulting to tactics like this. So you're getting, like, on the frivolous ones, at least. And that's why you're getting a lot of complaints and a lot of things that just don't hold merit. And then we've got the ones where I question and I go, what's best for your seller? Travis Lee, you said this when we were talking before. It's not a difficult thing to do. Will you give in a crux what the purpose and, the ideology behind the clear cooperation ruling?
Well, the whole idea with putting a listing on and being observant of your fiduciary duty is to show it to as many as people as possible so that you get the real true value. It's amazing. You sit in these hearings and some people, because you go to the hearing because they've requested a reduction of the fine. The fine's already been levied. So the hearing's usually about, I would like to plead my case and request a reduction of the fine. And most people come in and they've been caught in some unfortunate, I left the sign on the side of the house, and when the lawnmower guy mowed the lawn, he put it out, and I got caught. Or I thought I was getting the listing agreement signed today, and I put the sign in the yard, and then they didn't sign, and I went on about my business. So, you try and approach it with some amount of grace and hear what they've got to say, but it stymies me when people are coming here going, hey, would you please reduce my fine? And some of them are just kind of mean. People coming out, this is a witch hunt. I'm like, well, are you a witch? No, it's not. It's not a witch hunt. We're trying to create a level playing field for everybody. When you sign documents saying, I would like to be a member of the National Association of Realtors and Texas Realtors, you sign documents saying, I will clearly cooperate. I will work and play well with everyone else in the industry. That's all this is. That's all this is. And we've been talking about it forever.
Well, and I think that's, and we'll get back to Peggy in a second. But that is something that we need to focus on, is the fact of everybody wants to talk about, again, the disruption in our marketplace, the value that realtors do versus these other online platforms that are stripping away the personal, ability to be the best fiduciary, to get the most money for our clients. We sit there and say that all the time. Don't do a for sale by owner because you're leaving money on the table. Don't use an online platform that's automated and everything else. You're leaving money on the table. But then we say it's okay for us not to put it in the MLS so that you can get the most marketing for your client because that's what's going to garner the most money. You got to question the motives.
It doesn't play out.
You can't have both. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And that's where that saying came from. You can't sit there and say poo-poo on all these other things. Use a realtor. But okay, when it comes down to it, I want to hold this close to the vest because you only have a couple of reasons why you want to do that. One is you're trying to make sure that where this came from, there was steering and making sure that only certain people saw the listings. And of course, people have talked about that. It's not something that happens a lot in North Texas. But again, it was a national rule. To go back to what Taylor was saying, it wasn't a Metro Tex rule. It wasn't a Netris rule. It's a national. It's from the national situation. And so, yes, it might have been more prevalent in other areas of the country as far as what we would deem, redlining, fair housing issues, that kind of stuff. What we have seen, and if you say otherwise, you're a liar, and I'll call you out now, is that agents want to get both sides of the deal. And if you're not good enough to get both sides of the deal with true merit, move out of the way. And I'm okay with that because I don't have a problem being intermediary, but I also don't have a problem telling my buyer clients when I have a listing saying, hey, you need to do the same thing and put your best foot forward, just like everybody else that's going and seeing this listing. You don't get preferential treatment. Let's see what you need to do, because there is such a limited amount of inventory. You can't sit there. Of course, I might have a buyer that actually works for one of my listings. I've got 50 buyers that need houses, but that's not okay. And I've had one where I got $100,000 more for my client than what my buyer was willing to pay for the house than the person that actually got it. Don't you think that was worth more to my seller? $100,000? I mean, that's pretty huge. And by the way, it did appraise. So I'll just throw that out there as well. It wasn't a crazy offer. It's just a matter of, we've got to be better. And I think the clear cooperation and the uptick in the violations is more of a people just reacting to the marketplace. Yes, some of them are, mistakes, or, you guys have given grace, but ultimately we need to check ourselves. The marketplace has made us very maxed out, but we've got to take a deep breath, because this is not a car. This is, not a piece of office equipment. This is somebody's home. So, I think that's something that we all need to think about. Travis Lee, what do you think? Because I'm sure people will sit there and say, how is this in our best interest? Because if our seller says, no, I don't want it on the open marketplace. I trust you to be able to market privately, do whatever, bring me the best deal. I don't want to be inconvenienced with showings, everything else. How do you work around that? Because I think that's a lot of what we've heard with certain realtors, that's what their sellers are instructing them to do.
Well, if your seller said that, I mean, first I want to have a conversation with my seller going, why in the world do you want to work this way? Unless you're Cher or Madonna, who need to fly under the radar, the most amount of exposure equals best return. So you've got to show that house to as many people as possible. And if I'm taking that listing, I don't know if I would take that. Of course I would, but I'm going to have a forceful maybe conversation with them about it, because I just don't think that's how I get you the best dollar.
Yeah, and I've even cautioned people. I'm like, if they're not celebrity, corporate, big corporate, well known.
Why do they want that? Why would you?
Or have an illness or, physical limitation? Because there are people who, maybe elderly, things like that, where they need to have a lot of control over who comes in and out of their house.
Sure, you lock down the showings and limit, the traffic and do what you got to do, but you still got to put it on the market.
If they don't fall into those categories, then you have to wonder, well, why? And I have talked to groups that have said, well, they want to be able to talk to their mom's group or their this group, and because they're picky about who lives in their neighborhood. I'm like, are you listening to yourself?
Oh my God!
And so this is why they need to come out from under the cover and be, and be offered to everyone who might be interested, because you don't know who that might be, and someone may be an onlooker who said, I didn't get a chance to see that house, and why didn't I? And they may not look like everybody else in the neighborhood. So you have to ask yourself, why are they being so protective of, not getting it put into the MLS? And the tax argument. I'm sorry, your taxes are going to go up. I can't help it. I mean, mine go up every year to the maximum 10% because I have the homestead exemption. They are going to go up regardless of whether you put it in the MLS or not, because they have formulas that they use and things like that. There's a whole, that argument doesn't hold up. And you're also depriving the market of comps so that your next house can appraise.
And the chickens have come home to roost. If your value proposition was that you have this amazing exclusive list of clients who you want to show this to, and you're going to bring the best deal to the table, that's why you can't say that. You have no idea what brokerage across the street has as far as client base. That's a bogus proposition, and you can't say it no more.
No, and I think that's the biggest thing, is redefining your value proposition, because Travis Lee, I know this about you as well. We might be fancy with wanting, I mean, you've got your glass of Chardonnay right now, and mine is not Chardonnay. However, we are not too big to sit there and fix the mulch and get on our hands and knees and clip some wonky weeds that came the day before, photos were going to be taken. And in fact, you've helped me stage personal listings because I don't have the manpower And I still do that myself because I don't outsource a lot of those things because that's my personal value proposition. And the sweat equity that I put in specifically with my sellers speaks volume, and I think that's the differential is people are having to rely on different professional skills now, and they're not comfortable with that either. I'm not saying there's not outliers and exceptions. I'm just saying for the most, and I think you guys have talked about this before, the mainstream issues or issues with the policy are really not value issues. Those aren't the things that we're really dealing with. The outliers are one thing, but I think we just all have to get with the program because it's here to stay. And Henry even chimed in. He wants the exact most up-to-date definition, what the clear cooperation rule.
God, I've read it 1,000 times. I wish I had a copy in front of me.
Yeah, I can pull it up. It hasn't changed since NAR passed it. I can within 1 business day of marketing. That's the key.
So Henry, that means as far as that goes, and marketing is not just putting it on Facebook or circulating flyers or anything else like that. You putting a sign in the yard. That's marketing.
That's the number one violation too. Is the sign.
It's the sign.
Well, because they think they're not putting it on Facebook, so we put that in the chat so people can click on that and see what the rule is. It's putting in a sign in the yard and not having it in MLS within 24 hours. It's posting it on Facebook. It's putting it in a private Facebook group. Those are not private. Kathy Faulkner will tell you time and time again. She might even be in some of them, but people screenshot them and send them to her. And
people will come into a clear cooperation hearing and be horsey, not get their way, and then go have a tacky conversation with a group on Facebook, and we get that. I'm like, my goodness. Oh, people.
We have to do better. We are professionals. And we have to hold ourselves to a professional standard. So Henry said, thank you so much. That's what I thought. I thought I was specific to the sign being installed. Also, is the fine really $1,200? Is it $1,200 or is it $1,000?
Starts at $1,000.
Starts at $1,000. We have not had any second offenders though. But if the second offense is $2,500, third offense is $5,000, and a trip before the MLS committee with your broker to figure out why you can't seem to get it straight. But we haven't had anybody have the one violation.
Okay. I mean, it hurts enough. $1,000 is enough to make anybody sting. And beyond that, though, how long did we have the grace period between when the rule came down and then when we actually levied fines? A year?
Yeah.
Okay. And Taylor Walchick brought up that seller marketing the property is included, and that's
talking over the table at your HOA meeting about all of that. If you're marketing in any way, if you're sharing information about the house and putting it out there without having it on the MLS and available to everyone.
Well, I got a call yesterday from an agent who the seller told her about the house, and she arranged for her buyer client to go see it. And she called the listing agent, and the listing agent said, "Oh no, what? The seller's going around telling no, it's not hit," and they wouldn't let her see it till it hits.
Wowzer.
Yeah, and I said, and I didn't get an address and everything. I said, marketing occurred, so there is a clear cooperation violation, and the seller did the marketing, because if you read the very first sentence, it doesn't say who markets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's marketing.
And that's a great example of one that's going to come to the table, and we're going to have to hear this out and listen to you tell the story of how your seller did this and sort of feel out how was this malicious, or do you need to get your seller under control? Did you explain to them? Did you read that paragraph 6 to them? So you got to sort of get in there and figure out what the motivation was.
Well, I think it goes back to, again, we have to know our forms and contracts. And that's a part of it as well. And sitting there and saying, well, I didn't realize, that's not a good answer. We need to know what that says. So when you're in the listing appointment or you're talking to your seller and, hey, we're getting ready to go active, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, or we're in a coming soon status. Yes, Richard, it might help if agents read the MLS rules. I appreciate that. But that goes to back at what I was saying, being a proper professional and knowing I have to drive the transaction. I have to drive the process. And so part of my conversation is, hey, when it's live and when we're out there, I will help equip you with the information that you need, with the marketing materials. If you've got great groups and everything else that you want to do that, you can't do it though until we're active. Okay. And that's a part of it. Now, coming soon is obviously a different scenario. So let's talk about that as well, because I think that's something that people don't truly understand, how we can operate during that coming soon status. So Kathy, could you give us a little more information on that?
Well, coming soon actually helps you comply with the clear cooperation policy, because the policy was put into place so you can cooperate with one another, not the public. Okay. And so if you put it into coming soon status, you have met the standard, which is if you've cooperated with other brokers. Now you can't show the property, because you don't want to, take a listing and then keep people from seeing it. And then, if it's ready to be seen, if it's staged, if all the repairs have been done, photographs, then it's ready to show. Make it active, let everybody see it, right? But the coming soon status helps you to comply. There's been some discussion of wanting to get rid of it, and I'm like, you don't want to do that, because again, we would revert back to all these different sites. The brokerage community in the Metroplex, and it's part of Netra, said, hey guys, we got to get on the same page. Yep. With these coming soon listings. And that's why in 2018 we Metrotex led the charge to have a coming soon status, because our brokerage community was saying, my agents are going to this Facebook page and this website, and it was all over the place. And so we put it into the MLS to consolidate that effort. And with the adoption of clear cooperation, the policy was expanded to allow the listing to stay in that status for 30 days. Most agents don't leave it in there for 30 days. They want it active. They want it sold. Yeah. They don't want to leave it there. But unfortunately, back when we had the bad weather in February, we recently had hailstorms and things, houses break in the meantime. And so they were great. Some agents were grateful to have that extra time in the coming soon status to hurry up and get the house fixed, but yet get the word out to the agents that it's coming soon. Another thing I want to, these strange rumors go around. I'm like, what? Where are you getting this from? People think you have to have a coming soon rider if it's coming soon in the MLS. I'm like, no. You don't even have to. That's where their sign is in the yard is not up to us at all. There's no MLS rules about that. That's between you and the seller, whether there's any signage and what the signage would be. So there's no requirement to have a coming soon rider on it. And we've gotten some complaints about that. Interestingly, we've not really had any complaints about them being shown while they're in the coming soon status. Dance on the line. Some people will do some Facebooks or social media or email saying, oh, we've got a broker open coming on Friday, but it's in the coming soon status in the MLS. Well, I'm like, okay, well, it's fine as long as it's active from the broker open. And typically the ones that we track, they have been making them active even minutes before the broker open. And so once that happens, then they're good to go as long as it's in the active status.
But that's great. I mean, it's good to hear that people are complying. And truly, when that coming soon status first came out in 2018, it was difficult because most people weren't utilizing it. They were doing private marketing and doing everything else because, again, personally, I think it was trying to drive up personal, interest and trying to procure both sides. And that's not always the best case. So the clear cooperation with the coming soon status is kind of that magic sauce to allow it to work appropriately. And I would agree. I mean, certain things happen sometimes, but you also want to sit there and say, you might have a really great listing and you do want to drive up anticipation or something else. But yes, you aren't just ready. But that is what's in the best interest of my seller, for people to know, hey, just wait. Don't do anything else just yet. This is coming, but check yourself. Why are you doing it in the first place? Going back to, let's see, Franciana, how does it apply to the private contact list or client list, or to a large broker trying to sell across a company? Can we talk a little bit more about that?
You can absolutely market internally within your brokerage. Yes. Absolutely. But the minute that it hits the street and goes outside of your brokerage, so that's quite fine. I mean, we have, exclusive listings in our office all the time. Here's one that's coming soon. It'll be active in a week. know about it. I can't show it yet, but please know that it's coming available, and you can just generate buzz within your office. Absolutely. Kathy, can we sell that within the brokerage?
Yeah,
If it's listed coming soon.
yeah. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we've had a couple of complaints where the email actually went internally, but they sent it to us. I'm like, wait a minute, aren't you with that company? Hold on.
Oopsie.
Oh, hold on. It's fine. Y'all are talking to each other. Is within the now. It needs to be within the same under the same umbrella of that one broker. So just because you're with and I'm just picking on Century 21. I'm just because there's different.
My old buddies.
Yeah, there's different brokerages under Century 21. It doesn't mean you can share with everybody in Century 21. So the Mike Bowman people can share with the Mike Bowman people. The Jim Fight people can share with the Jim Fight people. It's who is sponsoring the brokerage. And so, like with Coldwell Banker Residential, that's Joanne Justice. And so, as long as she's sponsoring your license, then you're good to share it amongst the Coldwell Banker family.
Well, but Kathy, that goes back to, because I think a lot of people say that, well, that's unfair. But the listing, it actually is owned by the
brokerage,
and so that's what people have to understand. That's not a scapegoat. That's not a redirect trying to give people in larger offices an advantage or anything else. It's just a matter of, if that's your broker, the broker owns a listing, and that's where that comes from.
Do what he wants, but I go back to, have you shown this to the most number of eyes and gotten the true market value?
I mean, because how many buyer clients does your one brokerage has? But if you were to put it in the MLS, how many thousands more buyers do you have access to? And that's what I try to tell. And Francine is kind of alluding to that as well in her next comment. You have a larger network of agents as a small broker, and that's the MLS, where you have thousands. Or a brokerage even as large as Coldwell Banker or Ebby, yes, they have a few thousand, but the MLS has tens of thousands, and so that's a larger network that you can market to, rather than keeping it internal.
I will tell you, it's something that I got stuck on originally, because I'm an independent brokerage as well, and so I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, my thing was, why am I holding it off the MLS to begin with? And if my client, like you said, not checking your seller, but really trying to understand why the seller wants to do it that way. Well, if they really wanted privacy and making sure, then putting it across all the brokerage channels would not create that privacy either. And so we really just need to go backwards and kind of think about, why are we doing this? Why does it want to be done? And if we're trying to keep it in, close proximity to where we are, that's what is in the best interest of the actual seller. So we've got a few minutes left. I do want to go back up to Peggy's comment in regards to areas. So I'm going to let us get to that. But it said, the zones fell along traditional neighborhood boundaries, which has not changed in Dallas proper. Lakewood is still Lakewood. Hollywood is still Hollywood. Lakewood Heights is still the same. Park Cities is still where it is, or where it was, and so is Oaklawn. I assume this is about fear of being associated with redlining. Those boundaries existed before redlining.
Well, let's talk about what is redlining. The redlining was developed by FHA. It was developed by lenders, and I believe it was more like in the 50s and 60s. So it had to do with where should these banks lend money. And if there are redlining maps of the city of Dallas, and I wish I could find one where I could see the streets, but I can see the Trinity River very well. And north and south of the Trinity River are red on those maps. And guess where it's green? In the Park Cities. And so if you correlate where these MLS areas are, then they're pretty closely matched in some cases. So I think you just want to remove that barrier and not divide the city. And like I've been asking, when a buyer calls you, what are they saying to you? How are they expressing, hey, I need to buy a property? And are they asking you that? Because they don't know about MLS areas. They're like, what is areas? Right. Yeah, they don't know what that is. So how are you then determining that they need to be in Area 17? or that they need to be in Area 25. How are you making that decision? But because what is the consumer asking you for when they call in and say, I want to buy a house?
Well, and I think it goes back to what we said before. If there are certain areas that your clients still want to focus on, you're not completely removing that ability. It's just changing how you get there.
You have
And
to work a
so,
little harder.
yeah, you got to work a little harder. And if you want to use, so you can't put in the area and sub area. But we have phenomenal mapping tools. We have all these other things that are right there at our fingertips. And if we truly know, if we're in a niche marketplace and those are the areas and the neighborhoods that we focus on, well, you know where those boundary lines are. Or you know where if somebody says, I want to be in this, this neighborhood because that's where my parents grew up and my grandparents grew up and that's where I want to raise my kids. That's okay. That's okay. But you also know where that is. This is not inhibiting you from being able to streamline the information that goes out to your client. But like you said, Kathy, that has to be based on what your client is articulating and then you being the right fiduciary to your client to make sure that you're mapping it accordingly and doing everything else. This wasn't to punish anybody. It was just to help. So Taylor came out and said, one of the problems of MLS areas was the border of 17 and 14. The Cedars really is more indicative of 17, but it's classified as 14. And I think, Kathy, you mentioned that when we first started talking about that.
Yeah, that was one that had to be left on the table. It was passed by the MLS committee. It's probably when Taylor was part of the MLS committee. And it was approved to move the line for Area 17 to include the Cedars. Well, they couldn't do it because they had no way to change the map. That was one of probably 20 different requests to change the map boundary lines that couldn't be done because there's nobody to do it.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is you guys were hampered in being able to, evolve the areas. Therefore, the areas have become extinct in some of in some of those neighborhoods and cities. And so, again, it goes back to what's best for our clients. And if we can't sit there and utilize those areas appropriately, that's not what's best for our clients. And again, I go back to
it's not what's best for society.
No, absolutely. But Travis Lee, and I think some people want to sit there and throw it at, well, gosh, it's about fair housing. And that's not why we use it. It's not because we were doing anything appropriately with fair housing or anything else. It's, it is really an issue with keeping up the technology current across all IDX fields. It's both. It's society and technology. So if you don't want to talk about the societal issues and you're more comfortable with talking about the technology issues, it was antiquated and rest there. But the flip side of it is that some of these areas weren't appropriate or weren't doing what's best for the consumer. And I think that's the whole point is that we're trying to get information and just like the bathroom count is changing, I mean, it's all of this stuff, and I think that's as we learn and as we grow and as we also understand how the consumer is consuming that information. I love how you guys are just all in the chat. I told you I would watch the chat and you just can't help it the whole time. But it's about figuring out consumer behavior changes. And we need to be able to grow and change with it as well to keep us up to date, or else consumers are relying on all these non-realtor arbitrary platforms to give them the type of technology and the information that they want. Richard came back with TREC rule states a broker must determine each agent's geographic competency. Hey, that's another thing too. I mean, it's all about the fact that we're not sitting there and saying now somebody that's more proficient in Dallas can go play in, Fort Worth or Weatherford or wherever else. It's just saying we're removing these boundaries by numbers. We're removing these geographic competencies with the numbers. MapsGo is gone. I think, Kathy, you said you're not sure if they're extinct as a company, but I don't think any of us have actually heard the word MapsGo in any type of digital format at this juncture. And so we've just got to keep with the times. And I think that's what's amazing about Netris. That's what's amazing about you, Kathy. Travis Lee, dedicating your time as the MLS committee chair is that you guys are looking at this from what's best for the agents to be a proper fiduciary and what's best for the consumer. And that's what we've got to look at it. But I would also like to say is you guys kind of have an open door policy. None of this is secretive. And if somebody has a question, Kathy, I mean, are you open to somebody reaching out to you personally and just wanting to talk to you about it?
Oh, absolutely. I have offered. I will work with you in one-on-one to help you draw the maps, or I'll have one of my trainer personnel. And we're creating video content specific to help you. If you want to continue to have areas set up in the MLS, we are creating video content to show you how to do that. But what me and my team are willing to work with people one-on-one if need be, because it is uncomfortable. Because I've said this all along, and I tell my team this a lot. Agents, y'all are people. You don't want to sit behind a computer, right? And I totally get that. And that's what we do all day. But we couldn't sell real estate. I couldn't sell a stick of real estate, and you wouldn't want me to. And I'd hate, oh my gosh, I'd feel sorry for a buyer or seller if they had to work with me. But we want to use our talents to help you overcome this and become comfortable again, just like you were with the areas. Because guess what? Someday this system will be thrown out the window and there'll be another one in its place. And I have seen it. I've been doing this since 1983. We went from MLS books to, I can remember thinking, what is a PC? What is that going to do? Oh my God, yeah, this is awful. Well, how dumb was I? But it was changed, and then it's morphed and morphed and morphed and morphed and morphed. And in no industry probably changes more than real estate. And I know that there's probably some agents thinking, gosh, I wish that this was the one thing that would just stay the same, because you're always having to keep up with the law and other technology issues and platforms and competitors that are constantly coming in and out. And I say in and out of the industry. And you're always overwhelmed. And I totally get that. I have a heart for you. I don't want you to suffer. And we want to help you overcome this, because I hate change too. I hate it when I pick up my phone and I look at an app. I'm like, why did you change this app? You didn't ask my opinion about that, but boy, it was changed. Apple doesn't care if I like their stuff or not. But yet I keep buying it, and we figure it out and we move on. And so I don't want you to have to sit behind a computer and suffer through this. Let us help you. We could probably have a session of 15 or 20 minutes and help you get this done. So we can help you get past it.
Oh, we didn't spend any time on area meetings.
I know. So we're going to do that real quick. So I will. So one, I want to say thank you, Kathy, for all of that. And she truly means it. If you guys need help, reach out to her and her team, and we will curate the right type of training program. We already have virtual training sessions out there to utilize all the different systems and mapping tools. But we mean that, not just from a Metrotex and a Netra standpoint, but Kathy and her team are absolutely phenomenal. So Henry, we didn't get to that, and I apologize because there was so much meat on this. But yes, we are going to bring back MLS meetings, but there is going to be a shift. And Travis Lee, we've got 2 minutes. So I want you to give me your 60-second pitch on this.
60 seconds on how MLS meetings are morphing. So the area meetings are going to move over to what's the name of the group on staff?
Community Relations.
Community Relations. They're going to be in charge of hosting those meetings. Where are they going to take place? Who's the speaker? How often? All that sort of thing. The MLS Committee is going to deal with MLS issues and writing policy and chairing these hearings and doing that sort of thing. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the community outreach folks to do this stuff. And we have staff intervention now. Kathy's done it, kind of single-handedly in the past, but now we'll have more folks concentrating on it. And yes, they're going to come back not till after the first of the year is, the projection right now. Over the past 2 years or so, we've seen this coming, and it's I've been very vocal about, look, there are some really strong cultures in Oak Cliff, in Oak Lawn, in East Dallas, and the Park Cities, and Duncanville, where they have super strong MLS meetings where people know each other, love each other. They come there to hug and get some education, have some breakfast, and go tour houses. So we're really, really working diligently to make sure that those cultures stay intact. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. It's in process, but yes, those meetings are coming back. They're a big part of what we do.
Well, we were on the verge of going back. We were re-signing contracts. I mean, we were putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. I was saying, because a lot of the areas they lost their facility.
Tater tots for breakfast. Take me back.
Yeah, Hunky still. Yeah, but East Dallas lost Luby's, but we were on the brink of going back to in person, and then the COVID is back.
Well, and just to understand that is trying to make sure not only from a health and safety perspective, but also a functionality perspective, we've got to make sure that there are places in which these meetings can be held and can be redefined, because we are trying to bring it back better than ever. And so it's probably not going to be called MLS, meetings, because we want to define the both. But Henry, it's going to be awesome. We've got a task force that's actually working on this in the different areas. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. Just be prepared. The projection is back in January, we will be able to do that. So we have had lots of thanks. Thank you to both of you for being on here tonight. I know originally we're like, are we going to be able to fill an hour? And here we are at 6:30.
We can keep going.
Of course, Sherry popped on to say, appreciate you both, Kathy and Travis Lee. Keep it up. Great show too. Thank you.
Love you, boo. Get better.
Yes, but she is also the chair of professional development, and that's what's so great about this. We have new agents, seasoned agents, people that are rooted in Metro Tex, and others that are not, that are tuning into this right now. So share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends, share it with anybody, so they can understand more of what we're trying to do. So yes, Ed, we will see you soon. Okay, buddy. And we look forward to seeing all of you in person. But of course, reach out to Kathy Faulkner and her amazing team. Cheers, right? To a wonderful evening. Yes, Kathy. And if you need anything at all, comment there you go, in your water. That's the right thing to do. But comment in this section. We will continue to post updates here. And we appreciate you guys, and have a wonderful evening. We'll talk.
Everybody stay well. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you both. Thank you guys. Bye.